For decades, the United States has stood as the world's sole superpowery beacon of freedom to some, and an arrogant empire to others. But in the shadows of its dominance, a powerful wave of anti-Americanism has been building. This isn't just political disagreement. This is deep-seated hatred, fueled by decades of perceived interference, military interventions, and cultural imperialism. Right now, a global axis of resentment is hardening, uniting nations that see America not as a leader, but as the primary obstacle to their own destiny. This is the story of the most anti-American countries on Earth, and the history of grievances that turned them into America. Is a fiercest adversarius, 031 to 115. Clickbait. What's at stake? In the next few moments, we will travel to the capitals where anti-American sentiment is the official state policy. We will reveal the Middle Eastern theocracy that has chanted death to America for over 40 years, and the secret network of proxies it uses to attack U.S. interests worldwide. We will expose the Asian dictatorship that calls America its sworn enemy and actively works to sabotage U.S. power at every turn. We will show you how America's own allies in Europe and Latin America are quietly turning against it, driven by a new generation that sees the U.S. as a destructive force. And we will name the #1 most anti-American country, a regime whose very existence is built on a foundation of opposition to Washington. This is a journey into the heart of global hostility, to understand why the world's only superpower is also the world's most resented nation. 1:16 to 3 o'clock. Defining the enemy: anti-Americanism vs. diplomatic disagreement. Before we begin our countdown, we must understand what we are measuring. This is not about countries that simply disagree with specific U.S. policies. That describes most of the world. We are talking about nations where anti-Americanism is a core pillar of national identity and state ideology. This hostility manifests in state-sponsored propaganda, official policies designed to counter U.S. influence, active support for America's enemies, and in some cases, direct or proxy attacks on U.S. citizens and assets. This is a hatred cultivated over generations, woven into school textbooks, celebrated in public rallies, and used by regimes to justify their own power by presenting themselves as the only defense against American aggression. It is a powerful political tool, and for these regimes, America is the perfect enemy, distant enough to be a unifying abstract threat, yet influential enough to be blamed for every domestic failure. 3:01 to 5 o'clock, number 10. Turkey, the ally turned sour. Kicking off our list at number 10 is perhaps America's most complicated relationship. Turkey, a NATO ally for over 70 years. Turkey has undergone a dramatic transformation under President Recep Tayyip. What was once a steadfast partner has become a frequent antagonist. Turkish state media now regularly portrays the U.S. as a shadowy conspirator behind coup attempts, supporting Kurdish terrorists, and undermining Turkish sovereignty. The 2016 failed coup attempt, which Erdogan blamed on US-based cleric Fethullah Gulen, poisoned the well permanently in the eyes of the Turkish public. Turkey's purchase of the Russian S-400 missile system, in direct defiance of US warnings and NATO interoperability, was a landmark act of defiance. Today, anti-American sentiment in Turkey is not just the domain of radicals. It is mainstream, fueled by a sense of national pride and a narrative that America seeks to keep Turkey weak and divided. It is the story of an alliance shattered by deep mistrust. La 5 y 1. La 7. Number 9. And Venezuela, Bolivarian hostility. At number 9, we travel to Latin America, to the socialist dictatorship of Venezuela. Under the regimes of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, anti-Americanism became the central tenet of the Bolivarian Revolution. The U.S. is portrayed as an imperialist empire responsible for all of Venezuela's problems, from economic sanctions to the country's own crippling corruption and mismanagement. Venezuelan state television is a constant stream of anti-American propaganda. The government has repeatedly accused Washington of plotting assassinations, funding opposition groups, and they've been using weather weapons to sabotage its economy. This hostility is a deliberate strategy. By creating a common external enemy, The Maduro regime deflects blame for the humanitarian catastrophe it created and unites its base against a foreign scapegoat. For the suffering Venezuelan people, however, this ideological battle means little next to empty supermarket shelves and collapsing hospitals, a grim reality. Their leaders consistently blame on their number one enemy to the north, 7:01 to 9 o'clock. Number 8. Pakistan. The Fair with a Friend. Number 8 presents another case of a frayed alliance. Pakistan. For decades, Pakistan has been a frontline state for American interests, first against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan and then in the War on Terror. But this relationship has always been a marriage of convenience, not of shared values. Within Pakistan, anti-Americanism runs deep and across society. The US is seen as a fickle, transactional partner that uses Pakistan and then abandons it, disrespects its sovereignty with drone strikes, and is blindly supportive of its arch-rival, India. Pakistani conspiracy theories often paint the CIA as the hidden hand behind every national tragedy. This public sentiment severely constrains the Pakistani government's ability to cooperate openly with Washington, forcing it into a dangerous double game. Pakistan is a nation that has received billions in US aid, while its intelligence services have simultaneously supported the Taliban insurgents, killing American soldiers. It is a relationship defined by profound mutual suspicion and resentment. A clear example of how a tactical ally can be a strategic adversary in the court of public opinion. 9:01 to 10:30. Part 1. Conclusión y Part 2. Teaser. So far, we have seen the bitter betrayal of a NATO ally, the socialist scapegoating of a failing state, and the deep-seated resentment of a transactional partner. These are nations where anti-Americanism is a powerful political force. But now, we enter the big leagues. In Part 2, we will count down the top 5. We will reveal the European country with a state-sponsored anti-imperialist ideology that rivals the Cold War. We will expose the Middle Eastern power that has made confronting America its sole foreign policy objective for a generation. And we will name the number 1 most anti-American country on Earth, a regime that has institutionalized hatred of the United States as its very reason for existence. The most intense hostility is yet to come. We now move beyond nations that resent America to nations that have defined themselves in opposition to America. These are regimes whose survival, whose very identity, depends on portraying the United States as an existential, satanic evil. Their hostility is not a policy position. It is a foundational creed. 11:01 to 13 o'clock. Number 7. Belarus. Lukashenko's Soviet nostalgia at number 7. We find the Europe's last dictatorship. Belarus. Under the rule of Alexander Lukashenko, Belarus has preserved a Soviet-style system long after the USSR's collapse. Lukashenko's anti-Americanism is an extension of his nostalgia for the Soviet Empire and his personal authoritarian rule. He portrays the United States as the chief architect of color revolutions that seek to overthrow traditional governments like his own. The US is blamed for funding the Belarusian opposition and plotting regime change. This rhetoric intensified dramatically after the 2020 presidential election, which was widely seen as fraudulent and sparked massive pro-democracy protests. Lukashenko crushed the protests with brutal force and immediately blamed the unrest on American and Western scheming. His regime has become a vassal of Moscow, and his anti-American stance is a key part of his loyalty to Vladimir Putin, positioning himself as a stalwart defender of a traditional world against American-led liberal democracy. In Belarus, hating America is synonymous with supporting the regime. 13:01 to 15 o'clock. Number 6. Syria. The Ba'athist bunker. Number 6 brings us to the heart of the Middle East, to the war-torn regime of Bashar al-Assad in Syria. The Assad family's Ba'athist regime has been a designated state sponsor of terrorism and a sworn adversary of the United States for over 50 years. Anti-Americanism is baked into its ideology. Syria has provided safe haven and support for militant groups targeting US interests in Israel for decades. The US, in turn, has imposed crippling sanctions, labeled Syria part of an axis of evil, and provided support to rebels seeking to overthrow Assad during the Syrian civil war. For the Assad regime, America is the ultimate destabilizer, seeking to fragment the Arab world to benefit Israel and secure its own hegemony. State media consistently portrays U.S. policies as colonial and genocidal. Surviving a brutal civil war with the help of Russia and Iran has only hardened this stance. Assad's victory, in his view, is a victory over American regime change projects. His continued rule is a permanent affront to American influence in the region. 1501 to 17 o'clock. Number 5. Cuba, the revolutionary holdout. At number 5, just 90 miles from the U.S. coast, lies one of America's oldest and most ideological foes. Cuba. For over 6 decades, since Fidel Castro's revolution triumphed in 1959, anti-Americanism has been the central pillar of the Cuban state. The U.S. embargo, assassination attempts, and the failed Bay of Pigs invasion provided the perfect foundation for Castro to build a narrative of a small, proud nation defiantly resisting the imperialist Goliath. Socialism or death, fatherland or death, is not just a slogan. It is a direct rejection of the American model. The Cuban government maintains a vast apparatus to promote this ideology, blaming the U.S. blockade for all economic hardships and portraying America as a morally bankrupt society of inequality and violence. Even as the Cold War ended, this hostility remained, passed down through generations. For the Communist Party of Cuba, anti-Americanism is essential to justifying its single-party rule and economic failures. It is the glue that holds the revolution together. 1701 to 19 o'clock. Number 4. China. The systemic rival. Breaking into the top 4, we encounter America as first true peer competitor in a generation. The People's Republic of China. Chinese anti-Americanism is unique. It is not the fiery, revolutionary hatred of Iran or Cuba. It is colder, more calculated, and rooted in a sense of historical grievance and destined supremacy. The Chinese Communist Party CCP teaches its people about the century of humiliation, a period when Western powers, including the US, dominated and weakened China. Today, America is portrayed as the primary obstacle to China's rightful return to global leadership through state-controlled media and education. The CCP frames the US as a hypocritical, declining power, trying to contain China's peaceful rise. Support for Taiwan, criticism of human rights, and trade restrictions are all painted as evidence of American malice. This sentiment is not just government propaganda. It has been embraced by a generation of young Chinese nationalists online, who see challenging American power as a patriotic duty. China's anti-Americanism is the fuel for its ambition to replace the US-led world order with one of its own making. Las 7:01 de la noche. Las 9 de la noche. Number 3. And Russia, the revanchist superpower. At number 3, we have the most overtly confrontational adversary. Vladimir Putin's Russia. Russian anti-Americanism is the ideology of a resentful former superpower. Putin and his state media machine have spent 2 decades crafting a narrative that the United States entered the collapse of the Soviet Union to humiliate Russia, and has spent the subsequent years encircling and weakening it through NATO expansion and support for pro-democracy movements. America is depicted as a morally corrupt, decadent force seeking to impose its liberal values to destroy traditional Russian civilization. This rhetoric is not just for domestic consumption. It is a casus belli. It was used to justify the invasions of Georgia, Ukraine, and the broader hybrid war against the West. For Putin, stoking anti-American hatred is essential to rallying the population, justifying authoritarian crackdowns at home, and mobilizing support for his imperial ambitions. The Kremlin's goal is not just to oppose America, but to dismantle the US-led international system entirely, and forge a new world where Russia's power and values are respected and feared. 21:01 to 23 o'clock. Number 2 and 1. North Korea and I reign the theocratic and hermit kingdoms. Our number 2 and 1 spots go to the 2 regimes whose identities are most completely fused with opposition to the United States. Number 2, North Korea. The Kim dynasty's entire legitimacy is built on confronting the American imperialist aggressors The state ideology of juki, or self-reliance, is defined in opposition to foreign influence, primarily American. The US is the sworn enemy, the reason for the DPRK's massive military budget and nuclear program. Propaganda depicts American soldiers as monstrous subhumans. The Korean War is remembered as a heroic struggle against US genocide. This manufactured all-consuming hatred serves a critical purpose. It justifies the regime's total control over a starving population and its pursuit of weapons of mass destruction as the only guarantee of survival against an enemy portrayed as hell-bent on its destruction. For North Korea, anti-Americanism is a national religion. And number 1. Iran. The Islamic Republic of Iran is the most institutionally anti-American state on earth. Its very founding in the 1979 revolution was an explicit rejection of the US-backed Shah. The subsequent 444-day hostage crisis cemented the Great Satan, Asterahime, as primary ideological foe. Death to America is not an extremist slogan. It is a routine chant at official Friday prayers, a staple of political discourse for over 4 decades. This hostility is enshrined in the Constitution and is the guiding principle of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, Corps IRGC, which projects power across the Middle East through proxies explicitly to expel American influence. For the hardline clerics, perpetual conflict with America is necessary to sustain their revolutionary zeal, justify their grip on power, and position Iran as the leader of the Muslim world against Western imperialism. No other country has maintained such a consistent, high-decibel, and state-mandated hatred of the United States for so long. Iran is not just anti-American. It is professionally, doctrinally, and permanently. Las 11:01 de la noche, 2:05. Conclusion: the price of power. From the transactional bitterness of Pakistan to the ideological fervor of Iran, this animosity stems from a complex mix of historical grievance, geopolitical rivalry, and cynical domestic politics. For these regimes, America is a useful villain, a scapegoat for failure, a rallying cry for nationalism, and a justification for authoritarian control. But this hatred also has real consequences. It fuels terrorism, drives nuclear proliferation, sparks regional conflicts, and makes global cooperation on existential issues like climate change nearly impossible. The United States, as the dominant global power for 80 years, has inevitably made enemies. Its interventions, its cultural dominance, and its overwhelming power have inspired both admiration and deep, abiding resentment. Understanding this animosity is not about agreeing with it, but about recognizing the enduring reality that American leadership will always be challenged, and that its greatest strength has also sown the seeds of its most enduring opposition.